You're listening to the Topcast, the original podcast for growth-minded instrumental music and voice teachers since 2015, with your host, Tim Topham. Our mission at Top Music is to empower instrumental music and voice teachers to find and nurture their innate creativity so that they can teach lessons that are innovative, integrated, and inspiring, and that will have a positive, lifelong impact on their students. Join us each week as we interview teachers and creators from around the world and unpack fun and exciting ideas to maximize your teaching and studio business success. Hey, it's Tim here, and welcome back to the Topcast, where we explore the smartest, most creative, and future-focused ways to run a thriving and fun music teaching business. So great that you're with me again today. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We are talking all about our new collection of TopMusicSheets. It has already come out, actually, for the month of June, and it's available to all our members, as always. We would love for you to join us. You can actually join us on a $10 a month light subscription and access all of these Top Music collections as they come out each and every month. If you'd like to find out more about it, just head over to TopMusicSheets.com for all the details. Today's guest is our featured composer for this month. I just love doing these episodes because we get to dive into why these composers have created these pieces and how they actually go about teaching them. So today we're focused on 4 pieces which our composer is going to demonstrate, and then we're going to be able to talk about the patterns and the ways it's written and how the composer would go about teaching their own music. So super cool episode, and I'm so glad that you are here to join me. My guest is Anna Robinson. She started learning the piano at age 6 and flute at the age of 12. After graduating in mathematics, of all things, from University College London, she worked in administrative roles in classical music in London for several years before moving to Melbourne and working in the world of opera and artist management. After gaining performing and teaching diplomas in piano, Anna left the opera world to focus on her teaching. And her student roster grew very quickly, and she currently teaches at 2 government schools while maintaining a busy home studio, all up about 50 students a week. An experienced accompanist, Anna enjoys collaborating with fellow musicians of all ages and welcomes further opportunities to perform in this very special supportive role. She regularly accompanies AMEB and VCE exam candidates at Eisteddfods and auditions for choirs, musicals, school ensembles, and instrumental teachers' studio concerts. Welcome to the show, Anna Robinson. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for being our featured composer for this month. It's always a pleasure to be able to chat with our amazing composers, and I'm just so appreciative of all that you have contributed for us. And I did play through the music, and I love the variety, and there's just a real sense of fun in your music. There's the glissandi and the crossing hands and jumpy articulations and things like that. So I think there's 2 things that I pick up from that. One is that this is a really pedagogically sound collection, and we're going to talk a little bit about the teaching side of your pieces. But I think studios are just going to have fun with it. So thank you.
Oh, great.
So you were able to share a little bit about your backstory in our Top Music magazine. And for listeners, if you haven't checked out this month's magazine, it's over at topmusic.co/magazine. So find out all about Anna and her background over there. But today I thought we'd talk more about the pieces and have a listen to you playing them and chat about the pedagogy, the teaching side of them. So why don't we start with one of the pieces from this collection, your choice. Would you like to play through it? And then we can unpack a little bit about why you chose it.
Sure. Okay. Well, my first choice is Country Cousin Cat, which I know you've heard before. I wrote it in 2021 and been teaching it a while, and it seems to be quite a favourite, so I thought I'd play that. I'm just going to tilt down a little bit once I do that. And
actually, we should probably mention, Anna, you have lots of animal connections. We've got cats and dogs and things like that. Just tell us why you decided why your original collections, which these are from, why you went with those themes.
Well, it was really actually, I suppose it was something I noticed during lockdowns, that I met all my students' pets and we would often connect over their pets. And I just thought, this is just such a lovely way to connect via music and pets, and what a perfect combination. And I couldn't really find that whole collections had been done before, so I thought, why not?
Yeah, it's great. So this is Country Cousin Cat. You also like alliteration. From Cats on the Keys.
Yeah.
much fun. You actually played it faster than I tried. I didn't try and play it that fast. I like it. It does say energetically. So tell us a little bit about this piece. What kind of things teachers would pick up and what elements that you teaching students through this?
Well, I think the main thing is really the character of the piece, trying to convey that kind of country hoedown character, which is mainly achieved through the kind of crisp rhythms and articulations. So it's not so much an expressive piece as a kind of character piece. I found that just trying to get the staccato in right from the start and just trying to get those rhythms really clean. And we often do a lot of, patting to begin with. And then in the second section with the kind of that rhythm, it's quite a tricky little rhythm, but often, I found a phrase that everybody seems to relate to, which kind of teaches this rhythm, which is ice cream for breakfast.
Ice cream for breakfast. I like it.
And then with the very last one, they can have ice cream for tea.
All right.
So all the way through there, just ice cream for breakfast, ice cream for breakfast.
And is that how you would approach that? I mean, this is a really common pattern that any teacher listening would see that and they would know da 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 da. It's like a ragtime, I guess, kind of motive, isn't it? Do you teach? Are you an active sort of teacher of patterns? It's like, guys, see what this looks like, hear what it sounds like. This is going to come up all the time. Make sure you learn it.
But often I'll devise things on the fly for that student, like, if I can tie in the names of their pets, I usually know what football teams they support and what pets they have, pretty much for all my students and some of the pets' names. And if I can teach a rhythm using that material, then I will, because they remember it.
And that's an off kind of approach, isn't it? Putting words to rhythms.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. Yeah, my teacher did that to me as well. I can still picture some of the scores, like a Christopher Norton had this funny rhythm in it and she's like, okay, what's the phrase that goes along with this? And it stuck with me. As soon as I play it, I can hear that phrase back again. It's a great tactic because the other alternative would be to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 or whatever, like try and count it out. What does that work for you?
Only with older students who kind of get the subdivisions of the beat. But most of the children I would teach this to would be younger. So, yeah, I would definitely just stick to words and they get it. They understand it.
So you don't think there's anything missing by not being able to subdivide and count out loud and things like that for these patterns?
Not really. I mean, it depends on their age. Yeah, it depends on, and their kind of understanding, their kind of mathematical timeline understanding. Some older students never get it, but some younger ones might get it instantly. But
And so your process would be, here's the phrase, let's chant the phrase together, maybe clap it da, 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 as well, maybe then tap it, and tap going right hand, da, 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 left hand, da, 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 kind of thing. Yep. And then eventually to the piano. Is that how you'd approach this kind of thing?
Yeah, it would be.
And I agree with the articulation. I think, and I say this probably goes for most pieces that we teach. We should be adding as much articulation right from the start as possible, because as soon as you don't jump off the notes you're meant to jump off, it's harder to change that later on when kids have been playing through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a few pieces where it might not be, if you're kind of grappling with kind of chordal patterns or something, maybe not, maybe, block that first. But in general, if it's part of, because it's such an important part of the piece, teach it right from the start and get those actions in there. We also kind of like, they'll have me sitting next to them saying, join off, or down, up, up.
Ah, yes, I've done that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I actually kind of conduct quite a lot. And I found this actually, I've really only started doing it in the past few years, but if I'm sitting there next to that, I'm going down, up, like this, they often kind of get it a lot more than if I'm not conducting.
And I'm looking at the left hand. So the left hand is minim to crotchet, or half beat to quarter note with a staccato, and they're slurred together. And do you focus on a movement whereby it'd be kind of down on the lower note and then lift up to get the staccato on the top note? And would you work that from the start as well? So you've got the arm movement in it too?
So we'd kind of do a big down, up, join, off, or down, up, or yeah.
Oh, it's a super fun piece. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. Would you consider yourself as a pedagogical composer? Like, are you kind of thinking about these aspects of teaching while you're writing, or does that kind of come second?
Yeah, no, in fact, I've barely written anything that isn't pedagogical, to be honest. I think the only thing that I've really written is I've written a few Latin pieces, which were really just for me, just because I was kind of investigating that style and wanted to learn more. But everything else is pretty much pedagogical. And sometimes it's to foster a relationship with a student, like the students, not seeming engaged. How can I kind of get them more engaged? Let's write something for them. Let's kind of get some dialogue happening about what they're interested in. Other times it's like to address a need. If I can't find a study or a piece that actually kind of teaches a certain skill, like one of the pieces I wrote in Pooches at the Piano, Sniffari, is all about light thumbs, which I think is really important in the early stages, but I couldn't find any studies or anything about light thumbs in the early stages, only advanced ones. So I thought, well, I'll write one. So,
and would you say that's the catalyst for a lot of your music, is a child or a student with a challenge that you're thinking, they could do this in a scale or some boring repetition activity, or I could write a cool piece that practices it?
Yeah, I guess it's one of the triggers. Like there seem to be a number of things that trigger ideas for pieces, and then sometimes they kind of materialize quite quickly, and other times I'll sit on them for months and nothing happens, and then might go back to it or discard it. So
before we hear a second piece, I wanted to ask you, how did you go about choosing this particular selection for us from all of your music? All right. Well,
I chose one piece from each of the 3 books that I published and the Scooter's Waltz. And then I actually wrote the 8 other pieces for you because...
Oh, there you go. I didn't even realise that. That's even more special, Anna.
I completed them for you. Some of them are kind of partly written. I often need a bit of a stimulus to actually get stuff done and properly thought through and notated correctly. And this seemed like the perfect stimulus to get those things done. So
I'm glad to have been that stimulus to have your new works premiered effectively in this. That's great. I imagine that Albert, who's our publisher and engraver and editor, he's an incredibly skilled musician. I imagine he might have been helpful to you if these were the first time some of these were formally printed.
Yes. Yeah, no, it was amazing. It was a great process to go through, and he's utterly amazing. Like, he picked up things that even on things that are out printed in the past few years, and it's like, oh, that shouldn't have gone out.
He does that. He's incredibly precise, amazingly. Almost annoyingly so, actually, because he edited my book, No Book Beginner's book, and just kept coming back with red and more red. And but you know what? It ends up with an incredibly good product. And that's what we've got in front of us today. So why don't we talk about a second piece? What would you like to choose? And are you happy to give us a demo?
I have chosen Polka Dotty, which is one of the new ones.
Fantastic. I'll bring it up on my score.
So it's actually, I wrote this for a student I have called Dot, but she's called, like her friends call her Dotty, and she's known as Dotty at school. So I thought, well, it has to be a polka. I wrote this, but I wanted to try and keep it simple, like keep it within that kind of grade 1 level, because that's roughly where she's at. And a lot of the kids who I've shown this only to a few kids actually, but they've all kind of commented, oh, it looks really scary, and it looks, it's covered in dots and it's a scary piece. And then we'll go through it and it's like, oh, that's actually quite a simple piece, quite easy to play. So
why don't we have listen to it and see if they can pick up what actually makes this quite easy, even though it looks hard for students. everyone can see what I mean by fun. Like, this is just super fun. So my teacher used to call, like, when you've got two black notes, C sharp, D sharp together, she used to call them squash mosquitoes because that's kind of what they look like on the on the page. So you got squash mosquitoes, you've got bouncy fun, you've got kind of quirky changes. It actually goes through 3 keys, doesn't it?
Yes, which was another thing. Like I wrote it and I had F major, then the C major section, then I went back to F major and I was like, oh, this doesn't sound right. Something needs to happen. And then I realized, and I remember the joy of discovering how to modulate when I was a kid. And I just remember I couldn't stop modulating for about 6 months after I first learned how to do it.
Well, you did a very Beethoven transition through a little chromatic-y kind of section and then ended up on that D7 chord, didn't you, to land to the G, which I thought was great fun.
But you only need 2 notes to modulate and then off it goes.
Tell us about that for other people who might be listening when it comes to modulating.
Oh, well, just one pivot chord, and the way I first kind of encountered it was that it was actually in choir where, the choir teacher was doing, and then he'd do. And I was like, for weeks, I was like, what's he doing? Like, how does he do that? It's amazing. And then I figured it out and how it was so easy. Those just 2 notes, and then off you go on the next key. So that's kind of what I used here.
And I guess using the dominant 7th is the most common modulatory process. I'm sure there are others, but that's certainly makes sense. So hopefully teachers listening will have heard the left hand, which is very pattern-based, it's very repetitive, and it looks much harder than it is. How would you go about teaching that left hand? Would you block it with a student?
Probably not. I would probably just get them... possibly, it depends. Often I just get them to read it, and once they realise, or maybe I will tell them that it's in a 5-finger position and doesn't move, then they're like off and running, most of them. Not so the middle section, but then when you break that down and they see it's kind of got chromatic, it's just a spaced out chromatic scale for the right hand, and then the left hand, similarly with the kind of first notes of each pair going down, they realise that it's actually not that hard.
Yeah, I think you can take 2 approaches, can't you? Because sometimes you want the student to realise what's going on, but they may not do it unless you trigger them to think about it. So, okay, let's play the right hand. And they may not say anything or make any connections. And a teacher could say, well, what is this similar to something that we've played before? Or is this movement something that you know the name of? What if we just play those notes next door to each other as a scale using the thumb and third finger? What is it like? And then, they may go, oh, it's a chromatic scale. But they may not look at it, as you say. They may not look at the score and go, oh, that's a chromatic descending line.
Yeah, no, it would be rare, I think.
So sometimes we have to pull that out. And I'm thinking the left hand as well. Again, a student could play that. Would they make the connection, oh, that's just an F major chord. Oh, that's just an F7 chord. I'm not sure. No, it depends how they've been taught and how old they are, I guess. But that'd be another thing that I'd be reminding them of, whether I start as blocks and then break it up, or start with the music and then show them the blocks. Oh, these are just chord shapes. Yeah, it could go either way, I guess. Yeah, I really love it. Nice, fun, simple, and as you say, lots of patterns, but really fun to listen to and to play. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Before our next piece, I also just wanted to talk about composing more generally. And as you know, Top Music, I've always been a huge fan of getting kids composing and making up their own music. How do you approach that in your lessons, particularly as a composer?
Well, it's probably a relatively new thing for me after many years of teaching. I suppose, again, it was another thing that really started in lockdown. Kids were doodling away at the piano, noodling, and kind of we were going away from the old kind of regime of, exam prep and all of that sort of thing, just thinking outside the box a bit more. So we had this kind of exchange of ideas online. I'd show them what I was working on, they'd show me what they were working on, and it just became a really lovely thing. now we still do it. And I think if they see me doing it, they do it. Like, it just becomes part of the lesson. It becomes normal. Oh, this is what you do when you have piano lessons. You do a bit of this, you do a bit of that, you improvise, you compose. And it's been amazing, actually. I wish I'd started it 20 years ago.
Well, thanks for your honesty on that, Anna, because my guess as a composer would be that you would have been teaching composition and like doing that regularly all through for years, like since you've been, because you do it yourself. But you're saying, no, actually, I assume you probably had quite a traditional lesson experience yourself as a child. And that's how you've been teaching. And it's only more recently that you've gone, actually, why don't we do this together?
Yeah, no, and it's amazing. And it's, it's a whole new world that I feel like I've kind of missed out on. I'm trying to catch up now.
Oh, not at all. I'm sure your students are enjoying it, and having an actual published composer helping them improvise and things would be really fun, I imagine. Do you have any students who've created, finished, in inverted commas, works that maybe they've written out and been able to share?
Yeah, I've got a student, and she's in year 11, and she has been writing stuff and playing it at school. She doesn't actually kind of show me always the finished product, but I think that's fair enough. She usually just comes and says, I'm working on this, and plays me a bit. And if she's got a problem, she might say, I can't think what to do here. But I don't know that I actually heard her finished work. But her school has, and she's had great feedback. So it's like, well, it must be going all right.
That's fantastic.
So it's just a kind of drop in and drop out thing. And, I actually took up the electric bass 3 years ago, and my bass teacher is actually quite a well-known composer. And occasionally I take things to him, but I do the same thing. I never show him all of it. I just show him a part or get some feedback about something. And
why is that? Why don't you show them the finished product?
I feel it's a very personal thing, and I don't want to share that whole thing till I kind of like finished it and delivered it to whoever it's for. Like, it's not for him. It's for kids. It's for a younger, less discerning audience, perhaps. And teaching specific things, like he's not where they're at. So, yeah.
How do you know when a composition is finished? Is that hard sometimes? To stop tinkering?
I feel like often I just run out of ideas. So it's just like, I think that's done. And a lot of things, a lot of the repertoire that's in, like, for instance, in exam pieces and stuff, I just feel, this piece is too long for a kid this age. And they want the essence of it. They don't necessarily want to pay 6 or 8 pages of the same thing. And
it also allows you to have a more repertoire-rich, as Elisa Milne would call it, approach where they're learning more music because it's not taking a year to learn a piece, right? And that's always going to be a good thing. All right, what about piece number 3? What would you like to play? So piece number 3 is Unleashed, which is from my Pooches at the Piano collection. Appropriate title. This was... It was written for a student who wanted, she knew I was writing about dogs. In fact, she did some of the illustrations, and she wanted a piece with a bit of everything in it, because she's like, when my dog goes to the park, it does everything. It digs and it rolls and it chases other dogs and it runs away and comes back. And so we tried to include everything. So, here it is. That is, again, I keep coming back to this one simple word for your music, and it's fun. It just puts a smile on your face. Oh, good. Well, that's the main aim, actually, really, and, entertainment and enjoyment. Yes, it really speaks to that, and you've done a wonderful job in there. So you've got this kind of James Bondy little chromatic left-hand thing going on at the start. But the right hand, am I right in thinking we're in a pentatonic pattern, aren't we?
Yes, yeah.
No, 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 no. And so and there's that run up the piano, and left hand crosses over and goes right to the top, and then it cascades down again. Very cool. So for something like this, because are we in a mode, or are we in? Because the key signature is F sharp, but the first note is D, but it's a G chord, isn't it? So, and it's a G pentatonic in the right hand. So I just wonder, when you're working with a student on something like this, we were talking in the last piece about pattern, can they recognize something that's going on? Because that's what I always want my student. I want them to go, oh, I know what that is. That's a 5/1 cadence, or that's a seventh chord, or that's just a scale in the harmonic minor descending, or whatever it is. So for something like this, would you teach them actively about a pentatonic scale and the fact that those notes are from that scale, and maybe muck around with that a little bit or anything? Is that kind of part of your repertoire?
But actually, probably not. Like, I would probably get them to play G major chords and G major scale and probably leave it at that.
Because I love those kinds of talking points when I see pieces like this. It's like, pentatonic piece. Now we can talk about how these 5 notes are all you need to make to make a piece of music, right? And then I do like too that in a number of your pieces that you share, the left hand takes the melody and the right hand has to balance with that. How do you go about helping students with balance when that kind of thing comes up in music? Do you have any sort of tactics?
We often kind of start with I try to get them to separate left and right in their mind, and I talk about that, how we have to separate them in the brain, and they might do a bit of this and a bit of that. And
tummy
switch
tapping
it up.
and rub it, yep.
And then we might do getting to just to play 5-finger runs with one hand staccato and the other legato, just really slow, and just getting that whole idea of doing different things. And then we might put it into the context of whatever phrase it is that needs that, and different dynamics rather than, but often I'll say, whilst we're kind of making that transition from different articulations to different dynamics, we might make the staccato soft and the legato cantabile loud or louder, and try and, so kind of using articulation to actually help with that process.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to do it too.
Yeah, it seems to kind of be quite effective. I mean, it often needs reminding. It's often need reminding, but yeah.
And it's good because you've written in the dynamics for this. So from bar 11, are you able to just play that bar 11 section as it should be? So with the left hand forte, right hand piano, just those 4 bars or so.
Yes, this is the bar I marked up.
Yeah, and then badly with a really heavy right hand, because students, are you able to demonstrate that?
I do have a few that
Don't worry, I'm getting you to do stuff that's bad playing, right? But that's the kind of thing I think, teachers, we're always listening for and trying to help, how do we get that balance? But it's great. In your piece, you've got the dynamics written, so it's really clear, it's really obvious. And there's those kind of articulation, scale playing, as you say, right hand loud, left hand soft, right hand staccato, left hand legato, things like that, just to help them, as you say, separate the 2 hands, because it's such an important skill for a pianist. So before we hear a last selection, I wondered if you had any advice for other teachers out there who, maybe they're doing the same kind of thing. They're composing some pieces to help students and they're thinking, wonder if other teachers would like these. How would I go about doing that? Would you have any advice for budding teacher composers?
Yes, I would say, actually quite a few things. I would say definitely do it. Put yourself out there, which was what I really struggled with, because it's like, well, who am I? I'm this piano teacher who doesn't really have a track record of composing. But initially I just really, I got the books printed mainly to kind of give to students or possibly sell to my students and their families. And that was actually a really useful thing, was having printed copies, because of my situation teaching in schools, because often the schools are screen free, or particularly at primary schools, they have kind of school iPads that they use and then they put away and most of their work is written. So if you want the books to come to school, they have to be physical books. So getting some printed was, really helpful for me. I think it's a wonderful tradition that seems, teachers writing for their students. The most famous piece, Für Elise, was written for Therese, not Elise. It was written for a student or friend of Beethoven. And then this tradition seemed to die. And, or I think it was just with the, commercial publishing kind of taking over. We heard of it less often. But I think now there's everyone can be a creator. Like the focus is in society is coming back onto being a creator and being creative. And I think it will come back. And I think every musician I know or music teacher I know has multiple strings to their bow. They perform, they teach, and they write generally and record. So I would encourage you to do that. We need, like musicians today are kind of encouraged to have portfolio careers. So not rely on one income stream, you do them all. Yeah, I'd say this composing, whatever, there'll be somebody out there who loves it. I guarantee. You just need to put this out there so they can find you.
And how did you go about, just briefly, how did you go about getting your compositions out there into the world? What was the first step? Was it online or at a conference or something?
No, it was really just deciding that I put them all into Sibelius and kind of finished them, actually completed some, which was great. And I thought, it'd be nice to get them properly printed and engraved. And I could tell that it didn't look really tidy on the page. I just approached a few typesetters, one of whom was the wonderful Angela Turner, who said, yes, I'll do this. So I was very lucky. She was very encouraging and took me on and, got the first book typeset and printed beautifully. And I feel that opened kind of a few doors, just having her name in there.
And then you were feeling more confident to share it.
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'm certainly glad you have done. And I hope that anyone listening who is a budding teacher composer can get in touch with us, because we love sharing great music through our Top Music Sheets collections, just like we've done with Anna here today. So anyway, why don't we finish with a fourth and final demo and a quick chat about one of your other pieces?
Well, my last choice was a new one, Fallen Leaves, which was written earlier this year. And it's a tribute to Joe Hisashi, whose music I love. And
video game composer, is he? Why do I know his name?
A Studio Ghibli. He wrote a lot of the Studio Ghibli soundtracks, and I just love his music. The thing I've discovered with this piece is I've given it to a lot of my students who have digital pianos at home, but my pianos here are acoustic, so they come to the lesson. They have a different experience with this piece, perhaps more than other pieces, because they get to use the pedal. They get to practice cantabile on an acoustic piano, and they just all say, it's a really lovely piece to play on your piano. So
I really enjoyed playing this. I'm glad you chose it. And it's completely different to the other ones that you've demonstrated today, which is really good too. And I think it's good if teachers listening have a listen to the B section, because we just talked about where the melody is and things. So have a listen out to what happens in the B section. Definitely hear that Joe Hisashi influence for sure. It's beautifully done. Really nice. I love that ending, a little chromatic. I'm going to call it it's one of those Neapolitan somethings or something. I don't know. There's a name for it. You've gone 2, 2 flat, 1. Really, really lovely. kind of sounds a little bit pentatonic again. I'm thinking, is it? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, because it has that slightly Eastern sound to it in some ways as well. What approach do you have for teaching this? Any kind of secret tips or sort of suggested starting places?
Not really. Just I think for each student to think about the phrasing. I think the phrasing is really important, and the textures, like, you know, having beautiful legato phrases and then the contrasting staccato, which, I mean, there's only really that last bar of each line has staccato, but that contrasting texture is you know, meant to be the crunchy leaves. So I think it's quite important, and that's actually something I noticed a lot about Joe Hisashi's work, is he uses staccato very expressively, often as a kind of little change in mood, or I just love the way he uses staccato. So
yeah, it's unexpected, I think, particularly at the end of that first line, because it's all very cantabile, very legato. And then you've got little, there's a bit of popcorn in here. And then it goes back again. So if that's a Joe Hisashi trait, then you've mirrored that quite well, I think. Fantastic. Look, there are many more pieces in this collection. We won't have time to cover them all, but thank you so much for sharing those ones. And thank you. I had no idea that you'd written half of them for us fresh or finished them off from your manuscripts, your drafts. So thank you so much, Anna. It's such a fun collection. I know teachers are going to really enjoy it. So for those listening, where can they go to find out more about you and all of your other great music and all your books, Pooches and Cats and things?
Well, I have a website, so that's flyingivoriesmusic.com.au.
Flyingivoriesmusic.com.au. Great, we'll put a link in the show notes for that.
In the UK, my publications are on sale at Forsyths Music in Manchester, and they do online delivery and stuff. I think they also service the US, so it's probably easier. I think probably shipping is cheaper if you order from the UK to the US. I'm not sure. The Australian Music Centre, and they also have the pictures or they have all my books as downloads as well. So,
well, look, thank you so much, Anna. Was there anything else that you wanted to mention before we wrap things up?
I don't think so. Thank you very much for having me. It's been very nice to talk, and I loved having the stimulus to actually finish some stuff and really think through those ideas. So thank you for that opportunity.
It's our honour to have been able to share your music with everybody. So thank you. And thanks for coming on the show today. It's been wonderful to hang out.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I hope you enjoyed meeting Anna, our composer for this month, over at our Top Music Sheets program. Make sure you find out more about that if you're not already a member. Just $10 a month. You get access to these sheets each and every month, studio licensed, in your inbox, ready to use with students. We also provide recordings to go along with them over on our SoundCloud account. And in fact, even if you're not a member, you can go and have a listen to those. And as a light member, you get access to our full webinar back catalogue. That's 90 one-hour trainings on just about any topic you could possibly imagine. We also give you access to our Studio Success Path course and some of our discounts. It's super valuable for just $10 a month. Find out more at TopMusicSheets.com if you're interested. Well, that's the end of the show for this week. Thanks again for joining me. I do hope you've enjoyed finding out a little bit more about our composer, and I look forward to catching you again same time next week. Bye-bye, everyone. How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening today. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, visit us at topmusic.co/podcast or check out the show notes. I'm Tim Topham. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy your week ahead, and I'll catch you next time.